I have watched many Tampa Bay Lightning games over the course of my life, and I can safely say that the four that I watched this week, well, I think I'm going to let Johnny do the talking today. Hi everyone, Sammy Flair here. Welcome back to Bolt Action, the series where you get to see my mental state fluctuate because of the actions of the 23 violent ice dancers that I choose to root for on a nightly basis. And we're only 5 games into this season, and I'm already wondering why on earth I waited until this season to start doing it. If it wasn't already apparent, I have some thoughts about this week. So the Lightning played 4 games this week, and I will take this opportunity to remind you that for the purposes of these videos, my weeks go from Saturday to Friday, which is probably a very good thing for me because this coming Saturday, which is tomorrow in my world, they are playing the Toronto Maple Leafs. And based on how the first couple of games of this week went, I was seriously contemplating the possibility that the Lightning were going to start the season 1-5. Thankfully, it got better throughout the week. Not a lot better, but it got better. So before I have to start panicking about next week's schedule, let's focus on what actually happened this week. As I said, the Lightning played 4 games this week, 3 of which were on the road. It started with a Saturday night loss to Detroit 6-4. The very next night, second half of a back-to-back, they lost 5-2 to the Ottawa Senators, had a couple nights rest, then go to Buffalo and lose in overtime 3-2 before coming back to Tampa and winning against Vancouver 4-3. Now, if you're looking at that and thinking, oh, a 3-game losing streak to essentially open the season, then we're on the same page. Now, while I am not pushing the panic button just yet, I am at least reaching for my keys so I can unlock the casing and have quick access to it right over here, just in case I need to palm slam the thing by the end of next week. I know it's going to be very easy for me to take a tone in this video that does not give enough due credit to the Red Wings and to the Senators and to the Sabres. I remarked in last week's video that this 3-game road trip that they were going on would be kind of a nice, easy way to just get everybody reacclimated to regular season play. Like Buffalo and Detroit and Ottawa, they were not playoff teams by any stretch of the imagination. Buffalo was on the fringe, and you'd have some room for error to work in there. But what I failed to actually mention in that is I think, well, first of all, Buffalo is a good team. They are going to be fighting for a playoff spot this year. And Detroit and Ottawa, they have a promising future ahead of them as well. They have some great young talent. They're on the upswing, and really all 3 of those teams, they're benefiting from being on the upswing, just as other teams in the division, namely Boston and Tampa, are seemingly on the downswing. But what I meant when I said that remark is that, well, those are teams that aren't going to necessarily punish you for making mistakes because they're still young. They're still figuring things out for themselves. They're not exactly a force to be reckoned with yet. If you cough up a puck or 2 here and there, you're going to be fine. You can probably outscore those mistakes and be okay. Boy, let me tell you, I was wrong. Which really just leads me to say that even though I think the Lightning were capable of winning all 3 of those games, mind you, it was painfully obvious to me that they were not the better team in any of them. But the general tone of each of these games is that even though the Lightning were good in certain aspects, they were really only playing about 40 minutes of hockey, and newsflash, you got to play 60. And while I thought they were capable of winning all 3 of those games, realistically, I was thinking that they were going to win 1 or 2 of them. Always difficult to play a back-to-back, especially on the road. But I'm thinking, they'll go into Detroit, they'll take care of business. They'll be a little on the tired side for Ottawa. There's probably going to be a goalie change, so it wouldn't surprise me if they drop that game. And then the Buffalo game is kind of a 50-50. And of course, as it turns out, we couldn't even get that. Thankfully, they cleaned it up and got the win against Vancouver at home, and we'll talk about that one in just a minute. But in diagnosing these 3 losses to Detroit and to Ottawa and to Buffalo, there is actually a silver lining, despite the fact that these 3 losses they were bad. The silver lining is that it's really kind of one thing that's causing this issue, and it's a fixable thing. Okay, it's actually 2 things, but those 2 things fall under the same one umbrella, so I'm just going to call it one thing, and that one thing, the defense kind of sucks. I said at the beginning of the season that this team's success would hinge on how defensively responsible they are. And there's good reason for it. For the last, let's say, 7 years or so, the Tampa Bay Lightning as a team, as an organization, as a fan base, has been spoiled. They've been spoiled by having Andrei Vasilevskiy between the pipes, a goaltender who has won 2 Stanley Cups, who is constantly in contention for the Vezina Trophy, who is already, in my mind, in the conversation of best goalie of all time, and he definitely will be by the time his career is over because he's going to the Hall of Fame. I brought this up. I think I brought this up in my season preview video where they polled all the NHL players and asked them, among other things, if you had to have one goalie in net, if you needed to win one game, which goalie do you want? And over half the league said Andrei Vasilevskiy. And to just put that in perspective, the next closest person was Igor Shesterkin, and Vasilevskiy got like 10 times the amount of votes that Shesterkin did. And when you have a goalie that is that outstanding, that reliable on a nightly basis, you know that you can get away with some defensive mistakes. And more often than not, he is going to bail you out. He's going to keep you in those games. And with Vasilevskiy being out for 8 to 10 weeks, you are now essentially handing over all of that goaltending responsibility, all of that responsibility to bail the team out to a cavalcade of career backups, spearheaded by Jonas Johansson, who, if I'm not mistaken, has never started more than 15 games in a season for his entire career. And that's not a knock on Jonas Johansson or Matt Tompkins or anybody else who plays goalie before Vasilevskiy comes back, because they are doing more than the team can possibly ask them to do right now. They are standing on their head and they are doing their very best to deliver in impossible circumstances. Maybe it's the amount of love and respect I have for Vasilevskiy, or maybe it's the amount of love and respect that I have for the goalie position in general, but I am tending to take a bit more of an apologist approach to Johansson and to Tompkins, who got his first NHL start this week, and just say, yeah, you guys are doing great. It's the rest of the team that's letting you down. And just to help put that in perspective, of course, this stat does not tell the entirety of the story, but over the course of the 4 games this week, opponents outshot the Lightning by 30. 30 shots over the course of 4 games. Oh, and if you take away that game that the Lightning won against Vancouver, then the first 3 opponents outshot the Lightning by 37. Tampa Bay defense made Jonas Johansson face 41 shots against Detroit. The very next night, when Matt Tompkins is in goal, his first NHL start, in his first season when he has actually made an NHL roster, they made him face 37 shots to the Ottawa Senators. In what world do you think that you are setting your goalie up for success when they are facing that volume of shots? Oh, and before anybody jumps on me for this, none of this is the fault of taking too many penalties or having a bad penalty kill. The Lightning penalty kill did not allow a single power play goal to any of the 4 opponents they played this week. Every single thing that they surrendered was at 5-on-5. Actually, that's not true, because they did give up an empty net goal to Detroit. They gave up an empty net goal to Ottawa. But even still, like, it's 6-on-5 and you're supposed to have control of the puck even if you don't have a goal. Look, the point of it is that all of this has happened at even strength, or better. Don't believe me? Look, I'll prove it to you. This graph, courtesy of evolvinghockey.com, shows the expected goals for versus expected goals against per game at 5-on-5. And you can see down here, basically in the bottom left corner, there's Tampa Bay. 1.91 expected goals for, 3.39 expected goals against. Basically, at this point, second worst in the league. Now, early season stats are flimsy at best, but they do tell a little bit of the story about where teams are right now. And on any given night, you can usually rely on the Tampa Bay power play to cover up some of those deficiencies, like they did in the Nashville game, like they did in the Vancouver game. But you can't count on that being the case night in and night out. You need to score more at 5-on-5, and you need to defend a hell of a lot better at 5-on-5. The Lightning are still scoring at a decent enough pace, which means there is a problem in the defensive zone. And at least for me, as a fan and as somebody who's paying very close attention, there are essentially 2 things that factor into this. First of all, turnovers. The turnover problem is running rampant on this team right now. Turnovers are great if you're in a bakery. Turnovers are great if you're playing against a quarterback named Jameis Winston. No, it's okay. I can make fun of him. He played for both my college team and my NFL team. And for some reason or another, I have both his Florida State jersey and his Tampa Bay jersey. You win some, you lose some. Let me just highlight something for you. Let me give you a little peek into exactly what I'm talking about here. First game against Detroit. About 5 minutes in, nobody has scored yet. Puck is in the defensive zone for the Lightning. Calvin DeHaan passes it around to Erik Cernak. Erik Cernak has a lot of daylight in front of him, which makes it all the more mind-blowing that he does this. Yeah, there are 2 guys coming around from behind the net to try to track down that puck. I get that. But all Cernak has to do is turn up ice a little bit, advance it a little bit, and if he still wants to give it to Stamkos, it's just a little boop, just a little pass, like right over there, just that much. But instead, what he tries to do is force a backhand pass in the middle of the ice to Stamkos, and it ends up on the stick of Alex DeBrincat, who skates up a little bit, fires a shot on goal, sneaks through Jonas Johansson, and it's only because Dylan Sprong was there that DeBrincat doesn't get the goal. Like, he just had to tap it across the line. But for all intents and purposes, that play was made and finished by Alex DeBrincat because of a mistake by Erik Cernak turning the puck over. Why? Or how about this one the very next night against Ottawa from Nick Perbix, who, for all the wrong reasons, is making way too many appearances in these videos. Almost an identical play from the night before. Victor Hedman throws the puck behind the net over to Nick Perbix. Perbix, looks over his shoulder, tries to get a lay of the land, figures out what he wants to do, and the camera doesn't show exactly what happens here. I don't know if Perbix fanned on it or if he did just really pass it to Vlad Tarasenko, but the puck ended up in the back of the net. And as if he couldn't make matters worse, on the ensuing shot on goal, Nick Perbix screens his own goalie. Nicholas, what is going through your mind at this point that you think that's the right play? In all seriousness, I laughed at this turnover more after I watched it over and over and over again. On the broadcast, you can actually hear Nick Perbix yell, "Oh, as soon as he realizes what's happened. And not to be outdone, Mikhail Sergachev in the Vancouver game gives the puck away behind his own net. And another play where I just don't understand what he's actually thinking. JT Miller is right there. And it's not bad enough that JT Miller is right there. Brock Besser is sitting just feet in front of Jonas Johansson. You know exactly what's going to happen. Sergeant Johnson, what's going to happen? Bam! Gotta love a good Halo quote. So yes, turnovers are clearly an issue that needs to be fixed. But if they were the only issue right now, I think a lot of these games would have turned out differently. They probably would have allowed fewer goals, that's for sure. But when you combine all these turnovers with the second part, it really is a recipe for chaos. And that second part is the Lightning are missing defensive assignments left and right. Again, let me just show you what I mean. Since we're already picking on Nick Perbix, let's start with him again, this time in the Buffalo game. Tyson Jost is advancing the puck along the near side boards, and he's got Zach Bogosian in his face. Nick Perbix is sticking with Kyle Okposo, who is trying to sneak in behind Zach Bogosian. Arguably, that's a good decision. After all, you don't want to give a freebie entry into the zone and possibly a good look at the goal until you just look a little bit further up. That is Zemus Girgensons, I really hope I said that name correctly, screaming down from the other boards unchallenged and headed for the middle of the ice. And wouldn't you know it, he gets a clean breakaway. Now you may be asking, Sammy, what's the big deal? After all, Nick Perbix was still playing defense. Isn't that what he was supposed to do? And I would say yes, with a little bit of a but on the end. That but is that he is a right side defenseman, and currently where he is on the ice is on the left. Look, it does no good to sit here and play the what if game and just suppose, oh, well, what if he had left Okposo? What if Okposo actually got that puck and he had fired it on goal? Maybe it would have ended up the same way. That's true. Maybe it would have. But what I do know is you don't give a forward that much ice unchallenged, especially when you know that your forwards are going for a full line change at this point. Or how about this? Let's go back to the Detroit game for 1 second, because this is not just one defenseman missing their assignment. It's both of them. Moritz Seider is putting a shot on from the blue line, and you might be thinking, well, he may just be getting a good shot on for a rebound and hoping that somebody down low is going to get an easy tap in. And you'd be forgiven for thinking that until you can see what he sees. That is JT Compher and Michael Rasmussen getting behind Mikhail Sergachev and Darren Radish and in prime scoring position. Now, they didn't actually end up needing to tap this in because JT Compher just reaches over and gets a nice little redirect. Again, it was a good goal. And you might say, well, redirects are a lot of puck luck. You can't ask a goalie to do a whole lot more than that. He's tracking the puck where he thinks it's going to go. It's not really his fault. And I agree with you. It is not the goalie's fault. Between Radish and Sergachev, there is no reason whatsoever that either Rasmussen or Compher should have been that close and had that good of a look at that shot. Sergachev even turns around for a second. He sees JT Compher coming and does basically nothing. And I guess that's better than Darren Radish, who doesn't see Rasmussen coming and just kind of plants himself like a totem pole. And look, the same thing could have happened. Rasmussen could have tipped that in and the result would have been just the same. Both of those guys, why? Just why? Or how about one more just as an example? And this one is just, oh, this is bad. There's no reason that Jeff Skinner should be this wide open. You have Mikhail Sergachev and Darren Radish both down there. And I don't know who missed the assignment specifically on this one. I know that Sergachev is supposed to be playing on the left side, and he was making a defensive chase behind the net. He was attempting to make his way back to his spot. Maybe Radish should have scooted over. Again, it doesn't matter which one specifically. It matters that it happened. That's a thing that should never happen. And it would be so easy for me to sit here and throw shade at the goalies and assume that it's Jonas Johansson's fault. And in the case of the Ottawa game, Matt Tompkins' fault. But when you sit and look at these games carefully, you see what the real issue is. Yes, the goalies can be better. I can think of at least one goal for each of them that they should have had back, and that's okay. But when your defense is leaving you out to dry like this on a nightly basis, is it any surprise that the Lightning are getting scored on as often as they are? And I said this in the season preview video. I know that plus minus is largely a team stat. It doesn't tell you a ton about an individual player, but it does tell you something when Mikhail Sergachev, the number 2 defenseman, the defenseman that the Lightning are investing in for the future with that massive contract, both in money and in term, when he is at -7 through the first 5 games. He's supposed to be representative of the next generation of Lightning defensemen, of big and scary, but also defensively responsible defensemen. The blame doesn't land squarely on him. Everybody is having issues right now, all the way up to Victor Hedman. And oh, by the way, that plus minus, it's a little peculiar that somehow Nick Perbix is a +2. Explain that one to me. And as much as I want to sit here and complain about it, and rightfully so, because this defense, like I said, it kind of sucks right now, I need to recognize that it's a long season. We're only 5 games into an 82-game season. I'm sure if I, as a fan, am noticing this, then you better believe that John Cooper is noticing this. You better believe that management is noticing this, and they are already working on changes in how they shake up the lines a little bit to see who has better chemistry with who and who can cover each other's mistakes, or just figuring out who needs a little bit more time down in the minors. And like I said, it's a long season. You're going to have periods of growth and periods of development. And over the course of the next 77 games, I'm sure that things are going to get better. But I just wish that if the team were going to be experiencing growing pains, especially on defense like they are right now, it wouldn't be coming at the time where you are missing your all-star goalie. And despite how bad those first 3 games were during the week, they cleaned it up. They put forth a much better effort against Vancouver, and it showed. Outside of the first minute of the second period, which we just shouldn't talk about, the Lightning looked like they were in control of most of that game. And that's the kind of Lightning team that we have become accustomed to seeing. And it shouldn't matter if it's Vancouver or Detroit or Ottawa or Buffalo or the Stanley Cup champion Vegas Golden Knights. Defensive responsibility doesn't change on a night in, night out basis. You need to play that game no matter who your opponent is. Things will get better and they will fall in line. I'm still confident about that because I know what the core of this team is. But what I will say is that if these 4 games are indicative of where the team will be by the time Vasilevsky comes back, they're only going to make it harder on themselves in the months of January to April to fight for that playoff spot instead of just setting themselves up in a decent position now. And all of these things can be fixed. I would like to think that if Tampa had cleaned up the turnovers from this week, they at least get 1 more point in the standings. Let's think about the Detroit game. Early on, if Chernak doesn't cough up that puck and the rest of the game goes exactly how it did, all of a sudden it's 5-5 at the end of the third period. You're going into overtime. Even if you drop that game, you still got an extra point in the standings. But instead, stuff like that contributes to you losing and leaving the game with 0 points in the standings. For all the criticism that I have leveled against the Lightning, and in my opinion, it's been fair, I also want to make sure I highlight some of the good things and the standout players that we did see this week. Let's start with Brandon Hagel, who is already making that contract extension just look so smart. 4 goals, 2 assists in his first 5 games. He is contributing to the team in a big way, and he's living up to the potential of what we knew he was always capable of. Now, that said, his production is probably going to taper off a little bit. I don't know if Brandon Hagel is a point-per-game player. I really hope he is, because let's be honest, if he is, he's going to continue to contribute to this team in a big way for a long time, and he's going to solidify his place as a solid part of that future core. Nikita Kucherov, similarly, 4 goals, 2 assists in the first 5 games. He somehow manages to always get under the radar in contention for the Art Ross Trophy every year, probably because you have names like McDavid and Draisaitl, who are just lighting it up on a team that has nobody. I maintain that Nikita Kucherov has some of the best hands in the league, and he very well may be the best passer in the league. His on-ice offensive awareness is incredible. He always seems to know what to do. And apart from his passing prowess, he is very capable of unleashing some nasty shots. It would not surprise me again if he has another 100-point season and, like I said, in contention for the Art Ross Trophy. Nick Paul coming in next with 3 goals, 2 assists in his first 5 games. He is certainly finding himself in this offense, and especially on that number 1 power play. Like I said in an earlier video, he is doing everything that the Lightning expected Alex Killorn to do, and he's doing it with the same tenacity and ferocity, so there's no reason that he is not going to continue to contribute on that power play especially. I could see him flexing between lines 1 and 3, but he's going to be a staple of that first power play for a while. And lastly, I got to give a nod to goalie Matt Tompkins. Started in his first ever NHL game on the second half of a back-to-back against the Ottawa Senators. The deck was stacked against him, but even so, stopped 33 of 37. Yes, he ended up losing the game, but as I kind of already ranted about, the team didn't do him a whole lot of favors, but they were singing his praises after the game. Good on you, Matt. It was a great first showing, which leads us to what we have to look forward to over the course of the next week. Tampa has 3 games this coming week, all of them at home. Gets kicked off with a Saturday night bout against Toronto, then Tuesday night hosting the Carolina Hurricanes, and Thursday night hosting the San Jose Sharks. I think those first 2 games will tell us a lot about where Tampa stands in relation to some of the better, immediately playoff-ready teams right now. Again, granted, these are games number 6 and 7. Toronto and Carolina, they're not going to be necessarily at their best either, but it at least gives you some sort of a barometer to see what they're working with. San Jose, we pretty much know where they are. They're in a hard rebuild for the foreseeable future, so as long as you don't go out there and lay an egg against them, I think you're probably fine. Or how about this? If you beat both Toronto and Carolina, then yeah, you can kind of take a little bit of a night off against San Jose. Actually, no, don't do that. That's a bad idea. So with all of that to look forward to, that is going to do it for this video. Thank you so much for watching. I appreciate you just giving me a little bit of your time, and I hope you're enjoying what I'm doing here. Be sure to let me know what you think down in the comment box below. And until I see you again, remember, go Bolts! And let's hope that the defense gets things figured out, because I don't want to sit here and yell at my computer again. I'm sure my neighbors are wondering what the hell is going on.